gentlemen. I'm just going to strip off a bit because we mean business. Okay, it's lunchtime, so I hope you're not all too hungry. No? So I haven't got food for you, but I'm going to try and feed your soul, okay? Right, let's see if we can do that then. Well, my name's Paviour. I'm here to talk about the barriers to emotional engagement and how much they're costing you. Now, you may sometimes see some speakers who will say to you, I'm going to tell you about the cost, I'm going to tell you about return on investment, and then you sit there and you wait, and at the end of it, the answer is, it's costing you a lot. Or, you can get a very big return on investment. Do you know the sort of thing I mean? Do you know what I mean? I'm not going to do that today. I hope you've got pens and paper, because later on you are going to be able to write down the actual costs to your organisation. Does that sound like a good idea? So you just have to wait for a little while for that one. I'm just putting that out there as a little teaser for you. Anyway, hat off. See, the reason I wear a top hat is actually because I've got a big head. So I just want to start off by telling you a little bit about the fact that I've dedicated my life to the promotion of well-being as part of the positive psychology movement. Excuse me, I have to just do a little bit of a technical fix there. And actually I won a European award for my online stress tool, and that was about 15 years ago. So although I'm not an academic, I've been pushing for something that was not top priority in organisations for years and years now. And one of the things that I can tell you is that you cannot improve emotional engagement until you have eliminated the barriers. You have to do that first. And there is one vast and terrifying barrier that is costing organisations millions of pounds simply because we haven't noticed it. Simply because we haven't noticed it. Millions of pounds. Or have we? Which actually reminds me, I'll just go off on a bit of a tangent, it reminds me of when I was a child. I was about 7 years old. My father had a precision engineering company, and he was very advanced in the ideas of well-being at work. And he was also very keen on work-life balance. He used to have business meetings at supper, at restaurants, and the whole family would go, including me as a kid. So I was out there seeing these clients and things. And the problem with this was, as a child, I was rather indulged because the clients of my father knew that I had a bit of a thing about elephant jokes. And so they would indulge me and say, do you know any new elephant jokes, Maria? And of course, I'd resist. Do I have to really? Obviously, you know, wanting to resist all that attention. But I could be convinced. So I would tell jokes like, how do you know if an elephant is in bed with you? No? Oh, so letter E on his pyjamas? Obviously. What did the man say when he saw 3 elephants coming over the hill? No, he said, oh look, there are 3 elephants coming over the hill. What did the man say when he saw 3 elephants coming over the hill with sunglasses on?
They've got sunglasses.
No, he didn't say anything because he didn't recognise them. So anyway, the thing about elephant jokes, which I think is fun, is that most of them are actually really elephant in the room jokes. Because what they're talking about really is the fact that it is so obvious, it is staring you in the face. There he is. So when I say we haven't noticed this vast barrier to emotional engagement, what I'm actually saying is it could well be the elephant in the room. And that maybe when we do notice it, we're not doing anything about it. But you know, this is an interactive talk. Did you know that? Did you sign up to that? No? That's a shame, because it is. So what I'm going to get you to do, let's find out who's in this room, shall we? So what I'm going to get you to do is this. We're going to do some 360 fist bumps, okay? And what I'm going to ask you to do is to just stand up and go around and fist bump as many people as you can. But when you do it, there is a little rule here. When you do it, I want you to tell them something that you love. It can be anything that you love, but you've got to love it. You know, you might be somebody who is really passionate about swimming. So you can say, I love swimming. It might be your family. You might say, I love my family. Nice. But there's a rule here, and that is you can't repeat anything and you can't duplicate what somebody else said. And this is a very, very quick fire activity. So are you ready? You all look incredibly ready. I mean, you're like coiled springs. Okay, so I'm going to ask you, just go around and fist bump as many people as you can in a circle, very quickly. Tell them something you love as you fist bump, and then on to the next person. You've got a few seconds. 1, 2, 3, go.
You can do it. Go on, I should have gone for my own chef.
No, you're not actually. I don't think we have.
Okay, thank you everybody. Do please sit down. That was a really quick little burst of energy there for you all. Do sit down. Now that was all total self-interest from my point of view, as I'll explain in a moment. How are you all feeling? Now the thing is, I can guarantee that you are feeling different from how you were a couple of moments ago. I can guarantee it. Now if there's anyone in the audience here going, well, I know I'm not. I know I'm just the same as I was. Then I will encourage you to believe me, because I've got a team of medics out there and they're about to come in, take blood, urine and saliva samples to prove my point. Okay, right, I'll keep them at bay. The reason I say that is because what you just did changed your body chemistry. It actually changed your body chemistry. And this is good for me because you see, when you came in, you all looked lovely. And now you all look lovely and a little bit energized. Just a little bit different. And that's great for me because as I'm speaking, I'm going to emotionally respond to my audience. So now you've done that activity and you're all looking that little bit more involved, it means that I'm going to give a more engaging talk. So no pressure there then. So, what you've experienced is partly the answer to emotional engagement, but there is obviously an awful lot more to it than that. I hope you enjoyed that and that you got that slight different feeling, but there's more that we can do. But one of the key things is that when you want people to be emotionally engaged, they have to make an investment. There needs to be an investment. And that investment is 3 things: body, heart and mind. So the way we look at it is this: you need to invest your physical energy. There has to be an investment of your physical energy. There has to be a commitment emotionally. If you're going to be emotionally engaged, you have to be committed emotionally. And your mind, you have to be challenged. You have to feel that you can challenge yourself. You have to feel that you can master skills. So it's a physical, emotional and cognitive journey, this investment. And before I go on, it's important to just clarify the difference between being transactionally and being emotionally engaged. Because we talk a lot about engagement, but you notice I talk about emotional engagement, and that's different. Before we can actually really understand the barriers, we need to know the difference between these two. Because, as you can see here, we have a lovely little ape, and this little transactionally engaged ape, probably transactionally engaged because he's wearing a horrible green jumper, is looking a little bit like that. And we've got a lovely golden retriever who is demonstrating for me emotional commitment. The difference between the two is that the retriever is doing it for love. It's part of a family. It's doing it for love. The ape just has to do it. And the big significant difference between the two is that transactionally engaged people feel much more stress than emotionally engaged people. Emotionally engaged people tend not to feel stressed, they tend to be energized. The same amount of work pressure, they feel energized. Transactionally engaged feel stressed. There is a message here for organizations, no? How many of you know of somebody who is stressed by work? Just put your hand up. Yeah, okay, that's nearly everybody. So there's a really important message here. It's not just about how you feel, it's also to do with how well you perform. So what are the barriers? Well, what do people tell you in their engagement service? Do you, any of you have involved in engagement service at all? No, a couple of people. What are the things that people often say when they're complaining about being engaged? They talk about the problem of pay and conditions, yeah? They say the problem is we're not engaged because we're not getting paid enough, or the conditions aren't good enough, yeah? Yeah, would you agree? And actually, probably you all know that conditions are not motivators, yeah? That's kind of like old news, isn't it? Conditions are not motivators, pay isn't motivators, and as Daniel Pink says, there's a big difference between what science knows and business does. And we know that that's a fact. But when people say in their engagement survey, or they say to you that pay and conditions or pay and rewards are the problem, what they're really saying is you don't care. And when they're saying, actually the problem is the coffee machine, or the problem is we don't have lockers, what they're really saying is, you know, you don't care enough about me to give me a decent cup of coffee. And you don't care enough about me to look after my things that mean something to me. That's what they're really saying. And if it wasn't that, then the highest paid people in the world would be the most engaged. And if that was true, then why do the banks offer huge amounts of money in order to retain staff? They should all be in love with the bank, shouldn't they? Should be emotionally engaged, wouldn't want to leave. So highest paid is not an indicator of engagement. But I'm a really big fan of any TV program that's got something to do with business. I don't know if any of you watch Undercover Boss. Do any of you watch that? Are you like me? Do you like that kind of stuff? I love it. And there was a recent one which was really excellent with a restaurant chain. And the thing that was interesting is every single member of staff in this restaurant chain were absolutely brilliant. The waiter was really engaging with the customers, really being positive and supportive and just fabulous. And they had a barista who was really keen on perfect, fantastic, good quality drinks, whatever they were, coffees, whatever. But the problem was that they all revealed that they felt that management didn't really care, that they hadn't been noticed, they hadn't been listened to, the management leadership was on a cloud somewhere, okay? And the CEO, and all respect for this CEO, because he actually went out there and he found out, but the thing he came back and said, and this I tweeted about, he said, it is a problem with staff morale that we've got to deal with. And I say, no, it wasn't. It is not a problem with staff morale. Because if your people are performing in spite of the business, it's not a problem of staff morale. It's a problem of what is going on behind that. It is a problem in management. Now, I'm not pointing the finger at first-line managers because they do the most difficult of all management jobs. But they're the ones that need to be supported. That is where the problem is. If your people at the coalface are not being able to perform, it's management that is the problem. It is not the individual. So it's not a problem of staff morale, okay? Their morale is fine if you just look after them a little bit. They're doing the job. That's what you've got to be aware of. And the thing that this CEO said, which was great, he said, I'm going to give them all a party to show that we care. And a party is what I call a lovely thing, okay? There are lovely things that you can do in business. And there are some lovely things up Employee of the Month. That's a lovely thing. Or bonuses, or family picnics for all the staff, or bring your dog to work day. Do you have that? I actually bring my dog to work every day, and he spends most of his time curled up on the sofa, and then I have to shoot him off every time a client comes, and then vacuum the sofa where there's this little pile of mud. So I'm not sure it's actually a staff benefit, but never mind. Anyway, foosball, staff canteen, all those things, they're lovely things. All the lovely things that you can do in the world will not amount to anything in terms of emotional engagement unless you've eliminated the barriers. And I still haven't told you what that big one is yet, have I? I'm aware of that. Has any of you heard recently about Virgin getting rid of holiday entitlement? You heard about that? Engagement measure, right? Will it make any difference? Well, the question is, are the people already engaged? Because you see, with Virgin, it's likely to work because they already have a very, very good engagement score. So when you do a lovely thing, it's going to actually make a difference. I'm not saying lovely things are not good. I'm saying lovely things are fantastic because they show you care. But they can't be there in place of the most important things that show you care. They've got to be there first. Emotional engagement responds to how much you care. So this is my formula for wellbeing at work. That is not my dog on my sofa, but you get the idea, okay? This is what I have to contend with. Wellbeing at work is equal to relationships plus work pressure. That's the formula, but it's not as straightforward as that because relationships and work pressure are not equally impactful. It's actually that. Wellbeing at work is actually equal to 3 times relationships plus work pressure. In other words, if work pressure is negative, however you perceive that, but relationships are good, well-being is likely to be good. But if relationships are poor and work pressure is not a problem, well-being is still likely to be poor. Okay, it's so important. Relationships are the factor. This is scientifically based research. I'd just like to point out, being a psychologist, I like to use research-based stuff. So this isn't just making up. This is how it works. Relationships are vital, but what do we have to do to make them really supportive? So I'm going to do a little bit of interaction with you now. I want you to give me a thumbs up. This is really easy, isn't it? It doesn't take too much emotional commitment. I just want you to give me a thumbs up. What do we want from the people we work with? Give me a thumbs up if you think that what you could do with is somebody who will listen to you, your new ideas, that sort of thing. Give me a thumbs up if you think that's a good one. Okay, how about someone you can rely on? Yeah? Okay, what about someone who's sociable and actually, when they walk in the office, says hello to you? Yeah? Okay, good. What about somebody who's compassionate, caring and helpful? Any good? Yeah? Okay, we're all up for that one. And what about somebody who's basically quite stable emotionally speaking? You know, they're not going to chuck their toys out the pan every 5 minutes. Yes, yeah, pretty much. Okay, brilliant. What you've just described there are, or I described, you know how I make that you. What I just described there is what we call, in psychological terms, the big 5. These are the key traits that people are looking for. You may well have heard of the big 5. Yeah? People heard of that? And we use the acronym OCEAN. So that's what we're really looking for. These are the positive traits, the adaptive traits that we're looking for. And they relate to openness, somebody who'll listen to you. Conscientiousness, see, conscientiousness, someone you can rely on. Extroversion, that's in the sense of somebody who's outgoing enough to actually communicate with you. Agreeableness, people who are compassionate, caring, helpful, that sort of thing. And neuroticism. It's a bit of a downer, isn't it, actually? Neuroticism. But it's called neuroticism. It actually relates, we tend to call it now emotional stability, but neuroticism is the scale, so it doesn't sound quite right. It is the scale. But anyway, that's somebody who tends to be more stable. So what about the people that don't have those kinds of traits? So this sort of thing, okay? What kind of person is this? Well, we've got 2 people there. What kind of people are they? Are ocean type people? Oh, not working. Ooh. Okay. Right, I'm going to go back quickly. Let's look at them again. Would it help if I told you that the woman with the glass in her hand, pointing the finger, is actually a victim of a psychopath? Would that explain that a little bit more? And if I said to you, that's the psychopath, okay, that's from The Bad Seed, William March, okay? And that is Ingrid Bergman holding a knife at the man in the film Gaslight. Now, Gaslight actually set off the idea of something called gaslighting. Have you heard of gaslighting? It's where people are driven mad by small incremental changes, okay? This is a film that set it off. This is the man that was driving her mad. She's actually nice, take my word for it, okay? He's the baddie here. So, where are we getting to? Well, Dr. Robert Hare, who is the world's leading expert on psychopathy, okay? He has a forum for victims called Aftermath. And this is the sort of thing that people say. If you shout out, that one is a psychopath, you are the one they all call mad and unreasonable, and the psychopath says, there you are. See what madness I have to deal with? It's what Babiak and Hare call snakes in suits. And when you get someone who reacts like this, it doesn't mean that they're necessarily unstable. Do you treat this as normal? Because actually this can be a normal reaction. Being unemotional is abnormal. So what is the worst case scenario for you? Oh, whoops, go back. That. Sorry, I might have quick one forward too quickly. That's the worst case scenario for you in terms of what could your barriers to emotional engagement be here. These are what we call the dark triad: psychopathy, narcissism and Machiavellism. These are at worst your elephant-sized barriers. Narcissism, that's interesting. Try saying that with you. See that? It's, in a nutshell, manipulative behaviours, but we're talking about very manipulative behaviours. Machiavellism, secretive, deceptive behaviours. Psychopathy, often selfish, callous and remorseless. Now, I'm not saying to you, you should go out, as you can see, and think that you can go and diagnose this. What I'm saying is you need to be aware that yes, at one end of the spectrum there are people that have those personality disorders. There's only one person in 100 that is a psychopath. However, that is one person in 100. And a lot of them are locked up, that dilutes it a little bit more. Okay? So in your careers, you may come across this maybe a couple of times, maybe more. But the key thing is that we don't look at it. We tend to look away. Nigel Guénaud has just published a paper called Maladaptive Personality at Work, Exploring the Darkness. And he says the problem is that we're not looking for these traits in business. We're so busy looking for the positives, nobody is actually saying, do you know what, we actually also have to be aware of things which aren't right. Now it's really difficult to do this when someone is really helping you, even though you don't want them to, or somebody is so beloved and adored by everybody, but you feel that they've manipulated and lied and betrayed your trust or whatever, where you've been gaslit. It's difficult, but you have to be aware that these are traits we need to look at. One of the things that you can have to be aware of is the psychopathic fiction, and that's people with these sorts of traits sometimes create a world around themselves of fiction. And you notice it in organisations because usually there's a bubble of people that think they're fantastic and everyone else thinks that they're a real problem. Now, as I say, I'm not looking at this from the point of view of clinical diagnosis because that's the real end of the spectrum. But on a day-to-day level, not all traits are good, but we can look at the sort of behaviours that come up, and I call these behaviours vampire behaviours. Because for most of us, the elephant actually isn't really that scary. So I just did that for a bit of fun to get you to think about it. Sometimes, but not often. Most of the time, what we're dealing with are the sorts of behaviours that can be changed. I wrote a book called Changing Vampires into Angels because these behaviours can be changed. And I've identified 6 different behavioural strategies that are very much prevalent in organisations and in life, and they're unhealthy and they're damaging, and we have to be aware of them because we all might use them to some extent. And each one has got an antidote, which I'll bring up in a minute. But more times than I care to remember, I've heard people say to me, I know who the problem is, but no one will do anything about it. And I'm looking around the room and thinking, I wonder if any of you have had that experience. I wonder if there are any little nodding, knowing looks that, yeah, maybe. So the thing is, vampires and the dark triad cause stress and illness, and they stop people from being able to perform. They lose you people, and you have to be aware of them. How much is it costing you? How much is it actually costing you in not having managers and leaders being affective, and being able to really engage with you? Because you often find that these people can be promoted as well. Here's the numbers. Okay, here are the numbers. This is just a very quick look at how the numbers can actually calculate out for you, and you can make a note of this. In this particular example, we've got 3,000 people in an organisation earning on average 25,000. That's not a huge sum. I spoke to one of my clients was saying to me, our average is 100,000. So can you imagine the benefits there? Whoa! Anyway, enough of that. Just looking at an organisation like this, you can see that moving it from the industry average on absence up to not even the most engaged, but just moving it up a very sensible amount, you can save £889,000 a year in lost days. That's how much your lost days are costing you. So you can see if you are actually potentially losing nearly £3 million if you've got that kind of setup. If you want a return on investment calculator like that, visit me on my stand. We provide those, so you don't have to sit and write it all down now. So we can give you that kind of stuff. But that is only on sickness absence. There are lots of other things, so we're talking serious money here. These are all the places where lack of emotional engagement and problems with... Oh, they're coming one at a time. There we are, we look at them quickly. These are all the different things that you can end up benefiting from if you're actually having emotionally engaged people. Emotionally engaged people give you 2 times the profit, they give you 2.5 times revenue growth, and even if you're in the bottom quartile, they get 62% more accidents. So if you don't have engaged people, you get more accidents. Is that interesting? Isn't that interesting? It's all about emotional engagement. So the proof is in the evidence. That's based on the 2011 white paper. This is not my evidence. So, the antidote. These are the angels of emotional engagement. These are what they are. Oh, go back. It's funny how I think I have too much energy and it translates. So these are the angels that represent the antidote. Now I said I wrote a book about it, but this is the interesting thing. I may have written a book about this, I may be a psychologist, but I've recently, personally, suffered at the hands of 3 different people, all of whom had different maladaptive personality disorders, well, issues I should say, one of whom has actually got a diagnosed disorder. So, you know, like, I'm a psychologist, okay? How unlucky can you get? But, you know, it can happen to anybody. So you have to be aware of it, and actually as it happens, because this is what tends to happen when you come across this sort of thing, Hare says that it ends up with, often with suicide, bankruptcy, and court cases. That's actually very much what I can say. I can say that I've come face to face with all of these things. So yeah, it does have a devastating effect. It destroys businesses. You've got to be careful. I've got a client who has actually sold out their business in order to get away from an individual who was a problem. Sold the business. I'm not talking about a little business. I'm talking about a public limited company. And they sold it because they had a problem in the business. That is how serious it gets. We can't let that happen. I've got a client at the moment who's having everybody leaving because the MD of the company is a serious problem with maladaptive personality issues, and everybody is leaving, but the board are saying, well, he seems to know his numbers. Yeah, okay, we can see where the problem is here. I know an organisation where there's been a malpracticing GP that the PCT have turned their back on because they do not want to deal with the personality issue. This is serious stuff, and it's serious money. So that's why I'm passionate about doing something about it. I've written a blog called 3 Seasons of Electric Storms, which is based on my personal story. And it tells, which is serialised, so you can sign up to it if you want. But it tells the story, my story, but it also tells what I've learned. And obviously I'm looking at it also as a psychologist. And it tells me, I've learned that there are angels in us all. But there are also vampires. And that we need to be prepared to shift that elephant and not to accept negative or maladaptive behaviours. We can't do this any longer because we're going to be the ones that suffer in the end. I've learnt the need for courage as well as understanding. And I've learnt to be reasonably sceptical about people who look too good to be true. Or who believe themselves to be beyond question. And I've realised that when it feels wrong, it probably is wrong, even if that other person can talk their way out of it. Trust my instincts, I've learned, and not to feel I'm being negative when I notice negative things. That's difficult, isn't it? Because we feel like we're being negative and we want to be positive, but you're not. I've discovered very painfully that it's not so good to be the little boy that shouts out the emperor has no clothes. It's not so good. It doesn't actually work as well as you hope it will. There are actually better ways of doing this, and that when you do shout, it only makes you look mad. And I've learned that the elephant in the room can be shifted, sometimes by force, but more often by listening, by noticing, and by trusting ourselves, and sometimes trusting those people who may appear a little bit crazy. And I'm proud to consider myself one of those crazy people. And on that note, all that it remains for me to say at this moment is thank you for being a lovely interactive audience. Thank you very much and have a lovely day.